Hello and welcome to Andy Likes Cars. In today's video we're going to be looking at the Nissan Micra or Nissan March. I'm down here in Wellington and I've rented this wonderful machine to get me around for a week, and it cost $366 including insurance for that privilege. So what does $366 New Zealand get you in terms of motoring for a week? Let's find out. Okay, so let's look around the car. So it's a very inoffensive car, and if you want a car that has absolutely no respect on the open road, then this is a car for you. I don't think this looks as good as a previous generation Micra, which had a sort of a more cutesy front and had a little bit more personality. This seems to be like they took that design and made it a bit more bland. If we look up front, then it's got standard halogen headlights, and being a Japanese import, which this probably is, it's cloudy, as most Japanese imports seem to have yellow headlights. It's got a fairly inoffensive grille. It does look a little bit like a fish up front. I don't think it's an attractive car, but I guess it's not offensive either. This rental has certainly been used and abused in its 103,000 kilometres. It's got dents everywhere and a really bad patch up right there where it looks like someone had a go with enamel paint from a hobby shop. Moving around the car, it's a very basic car. It has everything you need, some dents in the doors, and around the back it's also quite basic. But it does say pure drive, and I think that's referring to the stop-start system, so the engine cuts out quite abruptly actually when you stop, which is good and bad. I guess it saves petrol, but it also unfortunately takes just a little bit too long when you're setting off to actually start again. It's that split second where you're thinking, oh my goodness, am I actually going to be able to make it across the intersection? And you're like, yes I can, and then it takes actually a second longer to start than you're expecting, so that's not so good. It's got a big badge at the back saying Nissan, and it's saying March. I think the rear tail lights are reasonably nice looking. It's not horrible overall. It's got a really big brake light and it's got a rear wiper. Alright, so what's storage like? Well, if we open up the boot, which has stuffed boot straps, so it doesn't actually hold up, oh, it's holding up. No, it's going to close. Yeah, I don't quite know. It's pretty hard to do, so I've got to hold this up while I show you around. So the boot is super basic, way more basic than a Suzuki Swift Sport, which I used to have. I mean, that had a split level boot, it had split folding seats. This has just got one continuous seat across the back, so super duper basic. This one's missing the parcel shelf. Now, if I can maybe try and pull up the boot full without having the boot collapse on me. Oh look, we find ourselves, oh, sorry, the boot hit me. You can find yourself a basic space saver with. Okay, so after a little bit of pain, we can get the rear seats down, and as you can see, there is this big load lip here, so if you're putting anything in the boot, it's not going to be super easy. I think there's a panel missing there, maybe, I'm not sure. Super basic boot though. It's missing the parcel tray and the things that go up here. If we put the seat back up, we can see that there are anchor points for a child seat here, which I guess is good. The back seat is fairly basic overall. Let's see what room's like. So if I move my stuff out of the way, I can fit in it. I can fit in it pretty well. So it's actually not too bad in terms of room. I've actually got plenty of leg room if I'm sitting behind myself, and I think I'm about 5'7", so it's not too bad. The seats it's basically just a foam squab, and I don't know how comfortable this would be over long journeys, but it's not too bad. Headroom isn't too bad at back here actually, so that's not too bad either. There's also a grab handle here. In front of us we have one solitary cup holder, just one cup holder for the rear passengers. Now there are free seat belts here, although if you were sitting in the middle, it's quite uncomfortable. It must be said the material quality in the back of this car is from the black plastic parts bin. Everything is cheap. Even this thing here is hard plastic. There is no soft touch anywhere. This is a very cheaply built car. The only, I guess, luxury is electric windows there. There is a rear speaker as well. Sorry, there's a train going by, that's why it's so noisy. If we jump into the car, we at least get some soft touch material there, but everything else is exceedingly cheap. You can see the exposed screw holes there. There is power windows, and it also has automatic folding mirrors. So when you lock the car, it will automatically fold those in, which is one big car feature. It also has keyless entry and go. Those are the only good features of this car. I guess there's a level to adjust your headlights. Now down here, which you probably can't see, I'll open the door, is that's the bonnet release and that's the fuel filler release. Right next to each other. Someone wasn't really thinking through design, were they? Now look, there is a speaker there. There is no tweeters, it's just a basic 4 speakers. There is a place to put your drinks if you so wish. Moving around, there is this cap right here where an ignition could have gone for an ignition key, and I'm wondering, oh no, if you remove it, there is nothing behind it. So if your keyless entry doesn't work, I'm not entirely sure what you do. These are pretty basic. So you've got indicators and lights on the right, and if you turn them on and the car's turned off, it beeps at you. There's no automatic lights on this car. This is a very basic car. The instrument cluster is the most basic of any car I've ever driven. You've got a speedometer and a fuel gauge and a clock. That's it, and you can only get those things when you turn the car on. It's the cheapest of the cheap. Everything here is hard plastic. There is no soft touch anywhere, and it really is the cheapest, scratchiest, nastiest plastic available. Now there is, I think, supposed to be another glove box here, but someone somewhere somehow has managed to remove that, so this just has some broken hinges. There is another smaller glove box down there with some things inside it. The heater controls are extremely basic. You've got directional indicator there, the heat indicator there, and the fan speed there, rear screen demist and air conditioning. I do think that unfortunately this interior isn't as nice as a previous generation Micra, which sort of had a cream colour and sort of had a bit more funkiness and a little bit more excitement. I think that this actually feels a downgrade from a previous car. I drove one of those when I was learning to drive, and I think that just had an overall nicer interior. I think it even had things like air ion purifiers and stuff like that, so it was kind of a funky small car, and this just feels like a really cheap small car. There's no attempt to make this anything nice. There are 2 cup holders here and a storage cubby there. There is a cigarette lighter or a place to put your USB charger there. One thing that has to be noted about the heater is that it takes an absolute age for the engine to warm up and thus warm the cabin up. It's winter time here in Wellington, where at night it's probably about 4 degrees centigrade and it's really cold, and this is the slowest heater I've experienced in any car I've driven. It takes absolutely ages for it to warm up or to give any kind of warmth, which is quite not nice at all. Now down here there is the automatic gearbox, although I think this is actually a CVT by the way the engine revs. Down here the cheapness continues. This is one hard plastic handbrake. There is some storage cubby here as well. This isn't awful. This is the only, I guess, attempt at style in the interior, is this the little bit of paint on the gear lever. Now this car comes with an aftermarket stereo, as most imported Japanese cars do. It's pretty basic, but it at least provides sound. So above we have the most basic, cheap mirrors available. There is one interior light, which is this thing here, and there's some grab handles here. So overall the interior is really basic, but let's see what's under the bonnet. So under the bonnet there is a very small engine, and I'm going to guess it's actually a 3-cylinder because there's only 3 intake things there. I'm not entirely sure, but I might do a bit of research to actually find out. But funnily enough, it doesn't sound like a 3-cylinder. I honestly thought it was a 4-cylinder because it had no distinctive engine note. So if it is a 3-cylinder and it doesn't sort of sound like a 3-cylinder, then that's really disappointing. There's nothing else notable under the bonnet at all. Okay, so we'll take 2. The engine is willing and it gets along a motorway just fine, but it's a bit of a noisy car. It certainly feels cheap, and there is a rattle coming from the dashboard, which I'm not quite sure where that comes from. And as you can see, after we go over a small pothole, it's a little bit noisy. It also seems to roll quite a bit. The suspension is soft but comfortable, so the suspension is soft but comfortable. Then the trade-off is that it rolls. Whoa, there we go. That feels very roly-poly. It's a little bit funny, really. It will accelerate, but then as it accelerates, it sort of does this, like I was trying to say before. It's weird. I don't know if the CVT is slipping. I'm not sure if that's how all Nissan Micra / Marches drive, but however it is, it's not very nice, and it does it all the time. It's pretty horrible, actually. CVTs are pretty horrible, to be fair, anyway. I mean, they're not a nice gearbox. So this was the smallest car I think Nissan made in the early 2010s, and I still think they make the Micra now. I mean, it's inoffensive transport. Should you buy it, or should you consider buying it? Look, there are many small cars available out there, and small and cheap and economical cars are not a bad thing. I can understand why many people might want them, but this one does seem to be really basic and really gutless. So one thing that's worthy of note is that this struggles up hills, any hill, to the point where it doesn't actually have enough performance to keep up with other traffic. There's a hill sort of over there, which is the Wainuia Mata hill, and it's quite a steep hill and it's quite challenging, but the most I could get out of this was 50 or 55 kilometers an hour up an 80k road, and it just couldn't get there. Took it over Rimataka Hill as well, and it really struggled up that. Really gutless, to be fair. It doesn't have enough power to actually even get around Wellington properly. It'll do it, but it will do it slower than other traffic. It doesn't have the power to overtake really at all. The car that on this side of the road has to be going really slowly. This is one of the slowest cars I've ever driven, so it really does struggle in terms of performance. And I don't really know why. I mean, I get that there are city cars, but this is still a city, and you know, driving over to Rimataka is still considered Greater Wellington, so most Wellingtonians wouldn't really consider that going too far out, but yet it struggles up those roads. So it could be much better in terms of performance. Alright, so one other thing that must be said is that the steering lacks feel, but you can have reasonable confidence when going around a corner in this car, but that doesn't mean that it's anything fast. I think also the steering wheel is pretty horrible. It's extremely basic and it's quite hard. It's not comfortable to hold, but it's okay. It's not heated. There's nothing luxury about this car at all. It's really basic, which is a shame really, because if it had a couple more features, it would be nicer to drive. My Suzuki Swift Sport that I had was a much nicer car to be in, to be fair. It felt better made, the interior quality of materials was better overall. This just feels really, really, really cheap and really built to a price. There's almost been no concessions for making this car more comfortable. But maybe there are nicer Micras up the range if you spend more money. But the engine really does need a bit more power to sort of get around to modern traffic. We're about to go up the Kaifata Gorge now, where there is a big hill, and we're starting from a standstill. Let's see if we can keep up with modern traffic. So it's... there it goes again. A wonderful, wonderful transmission. Oh, CVTs are absolutely awful. I much prefer an auto box. I think I much prefer a manual, to be quite frank. It's pretty horrible in terms of, I don't really understand why they fit it. I mean, then again, I guess this car is not made for performance in any way, shape or form, or anything really. It's just a car. We're at 60 k's an hour, and you put your foot down and it does that immediately. It's horrible. Okay, now we are going to start to struggle because we've almost slowed down to 30. Oh yeah, hill start. Oh, there's a car stopped in front of me, don't know why. Right, this is an 80k an hour road and I'm doing 40, although there is people in front of me, so it's not necessarily by choice. This is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so people are starting to head home from work. I'm going to this lane. There are a lot of small cars in Wellington. There are heaps of small cars in Wellington. There is a Tita and a Mazda Versia and a Honda Jazz and another Mazda Versia, and behind me there's a Prius C. There's lots of small cars in Wellington. A lot more small cars I think in Wellington than there are in Auckland. And the other problem with driving this car is that nobody really respects you on the road. It's sort of almost a target. If you're driving this car, the assumption is that you're actually driving under the speed limit quite significantly, and you must be driving really, really slowly. Although, to be fair, most Nissan Micras are fairly badly driven by people who don't really know how to drive, so I guess that assumption is fair. Well, I guess we got up that hill reasonably okay actually, although we were going quite slowly. But if you have to accelerate in any way, shape or form, you will get to hear the wonderful transmission struggling and the engine revving. When I actually took it up the Rumatakas and I did attempt an overtake up a hill, the engine was bouncing off the limiter, even though the CVT should stop that. It really doesn't sound like a 3-cylinder. I had no idea this was a 3-cylinder given the engine note. I thought it was a 4-cylinder, which really probably tells you how crap this car is. It has to be said, this is probably the worst car I've ever driven. And it is a car, it has a roof, it keeps the rain out, and it's not been totally awful. It's acceptable, I guess, but my goodness, it feels like basic transport. It feels like the cheapest of the cheap. You know, like, I don't think they can make a car cheaper that's considered modern, although it's 10 years old, so I'm not sure how exactly modern that is. Yeah, it's pretty hokey overall. It's not, and to be honest, when I've got out of it in car parks, I've felt a little embarrassed, to be honest, that I'm driving this car. This is certainly something I wouldn't take pride in. You know, it's a cheap car. Is it economical? I guess it's a question that one might want to ask. I don't know. It's not uneconomical, but I don't think it's as economical as a hybrid. It's certainly not economical enough to make me think, gee, I'll buy this over a nice car or a car that uses more petrol. It certainly isn't so cheap to run that you'll forgive it for its flaws or its crap build quality or its cheapness. It must be said though that it is at least well screwed together, other than the rattle in the dashboard, which is annoying. Everything else seems solid. Nothing sort of moves around. Everything feels like it's well screwed in place. Cheap but well screwed together. So I guess that's something. I guess this car is reliable. I mean, it's a Nissan, so how unreliable could a Nissan be? But at the same time, if you were to buy it in Wellington and you were doing things like living over in Wainui Mata or having to go up big hills every day, I don't know how long this car would last. That's a pretty steep hill. So I think that you would kill the car off pretty quickly. I don't think it will last forever. So that's something else to consider, that the car may not last that long in those circumstances. So that could be not so good. So thanks for watching. So that's a really quick review of the Nissan Micra / March, a cheap, very cheap and economical car. Would I say it's worth it for $366 for a week? Well, I think it's because it's actually the school holidays, so that's probably why it's a bit more expensive. I have rented better rental cars for cheaper. I think the Toyota that I got when I took around that there in the South Island was actually cheaper and much better than this car. Overall, if I was to rate this car, it's a car. Is it fun to drive? No, there is nothing interesting or exciting about driving this car. It is the most basic transport available. Oh! Let's go faster! Okay. It really doesn't like doing that at all. Well, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to bring more content soon. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe. See you later.